Excess inflammatory visceral fat stands as one of the most hazardous conditions your body can harbor. It creates a direct pathway toward developing type 2 diabetes. It sets the stage for numerous forms of cancer, contributes to heart disease, and is even associated with dementia. I was truly amazed to discover that individuals consuming a certain beverage experienced a reduction in their waist measurement, decreased overall body fat, lowered markers of inflammation, and actually shed pounds. One group was instructed to drink 4 cups of coffee daily over a 6-month period. By the conclusion of the research, the coffee-consuming participants had lost an average of 4.6 pounds. Conversely, the group receiving a placebo gained an average of 4.4 pounds. Therefore, the very first step, if your goal is to shed visceral fat, is to avoid this common mistake. If you are genuinely committed to combating body fat and enhancing your metabolic rate, you should not approach food with apprehension. Instead, you should embrace it, seeking out wholesome, flavorful foods consumed in reasonable quantities and, crucially, consumed at optimal times. So it's not merely about what you eat, though that is undoubtedly critical, and how you eat is also significant, but the timing of your meals can likewise influence outcomes. Research confirms that yes, oily fish are beneficial for health due to their content of marine omega-3 fatty acids. However, a study conducted in Iceland yielded quite unexpected results. The investigation aimed to examine the impact of omega-3 fatty acids on body fat composition. And what was the finding? It activates brown adipose tissue, promotes weight loss, incinerates visceral fat, and can lead to a smaller waistline. Unsurprisingly, the research concluded that eating salmon 3 times weekly for 8 weeks can result in a weight loss of up to 15 pounds. That is a substantial amount. Omega-3s are abundant in salmon, correct? It is an oily fish. In fact, I can inform you that a 5-ounce portion of salmon contains approximately 1,565 milligrams of marine-sourced omega-3 fatty acids. However, here is the astonishing part, and this is what truly captured my attention. The same research team examined what they believed would be a non-oily fish, such as cod. Cod is not classified as an oily fish. Cod contains only about 284 milligrams of omega-3s, not 1,500. That's relatively low. What do you think they discovered? Participants who ate cod 3 times per week lost 10 pounds over the same 8-week period. Incredible. This demonstrates that you do not need to consume mackerel or anchovies to obtain sufficient omega-3s for metabolic health and fat reduction. A fish as lean as cod, with its modest omega-3 content, can be effective. Therefore, in my work, I provide equivalents for various seafoods matching that cod-level omega-3 amount. If you are targeting 284 milligrams of omega-3s per serving, do you know what that equates to in medium-sized Gulf shrimp? You only need to consume 4 shrimp to match the omega-3s in that serving of cod. How about oysters? You would need to eat a few oysters. For mackerel, which is extremely oily, you require just 1 forkful to obtain the same amount as the cod serving. You don't need much mackerel at all. Halibut, which is a very mild white fish, correct? Not oily. You only need to eat a piece half the size of a deck of cards to receive the equivalent omega-3 content found in that cod serving. Recall, I explained that when you consume food, your insulin levels increase to help transport that energy into your cells. Our metabolism is intrinsically designed so that during eating, while insulin is elevated, our system remains concentrated on storing fuel, not utilizing it. When we are in a fasted state, our insulin declines. Our metabolism then shifts direction, like switching railroad tracks, and essentially declares, all right, now it's time to combust some of that fat stored within cells. You might be burning fat from your last meal from the previous day or even from past holiday feasts. But this fat-burning process is actively occurring, particularly while you sleep. That is the fundamental wiring of our metabolism. Here's the strategy I employ. I aim to provide my body with the maximum possible window for natural fat combustion. If I sleep 8 hours nightly, from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., for instance, this is my method. After eating dinner the previous evening, if I finish at 7 p.m. and clean up by 8 p.m., I consume nothing further after that meal. So I complete cleaning up at 8 o'clock. I retire at 11 p.m., thereby adding 3 bonus hours of fat-burning metabolic activity. I then delay breakfast by an additional hour in the morning. Now I've gained another hour. Therefore, the 8 hours of sleep plus the 3 post-dinner hours totals 11 hours plus 1 more morning hour. I have just dedicated half of my day to burning surplus fuel. So what are some foods that promote satiety, and how should you consume them to reach that more optimal state? Firstly, foods rich in dietary fiber such as chickpeas, legumes, lentils, and cannellini beans. Have you ever eaten a bean taco? A single bean taco can reduce your consumption at a later meal, like dinner, because the high fiber content in beans exerts a powerful satiating effect, not only in your digestive tract, but also signaling to your brain. This is highly advantageous. Furthermore, that dietary fiber provides a major secondary benefit. It nourishes our gut microbiome. This microbiome community is proving to be far more crucial for longevity than we previously understood. This is a domain that captivates me intensely, given our current focus on gut health, anti-inflammation, autoimmune conditions, and the broader contemporary dialogue around digestive wellness. Emerging research indicates that the gut microbiome is vitally important for extending lifespan in ways we are still deciphering. A study conducted by Cornell University in New York examined Swedish women of normal body weight or who were slender. You may have heard the term skinny fat. This was precisely the phenomenon under investigation. The researchers performed DEXA scans, as mentioned, to quantify their body fat percentage. They then tracked these women for over 13 years. The findings revealed that women without excess body fat maintained a standard risk level for breast cancer. However, women characterized as skinny fat. Remember, all participants in this study of about 3,000 were of normal body size, meaning they were not supermodels, but average-sized. Some slimmer than others, yet none clinically obese or overweight. At the study's outset, baseline DEXA scans were obtained. The results showed that women with excess body fat over the 13-year period experienced a 3-fold increased risk of developing breast cancer linked to elevated inflammatory markers in their bloodstream. This logically follows. Imagine a tube or suitcase of fixed size that cannot expand. If harmful substances like inflammatory fat leak from it, this creates a problem. Cancer prospers in an inflammatory setting. Even a microscopic cancer cell or a small tumor, when bathed in inflammation, is akin to dousing smoldering embers with gasoline. If you've ever been camping with a dying fire and you pour on gasoline, boom, whoosh, you instantly reignite a major blaze. That illustrates the peril of inflammation. This is precisely why excess visceral fat, being inflammatory, is so dangerous and connected to cancer, and it's not solely breast cancer. Excess visceral fat has now been linked to an elevated risk of 14 other cancer types. This growing list includes colorectal, ovarian, lung, breast, and prostate cancers. Your risk for these malignancies appears heightened if you possess high levels of visceral fat, which makes complete sense given the role of inflammation. Now, inflammatory excess visceral fat is among the most perilous substances you can host within your body. It establishes the foundation for type 2 diabetes. It paves the way for many different cancers, for cardiovascular illness, and even cognitive decline like dementia. A substantial body of research connects excess visceral fat with all these chronic conditions. Therefore, avoiding excess visceral fat is paramount. How can you determine if you have too much? To measure it accurately, you require a specialized scan known as a DEXA scan, or dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. This imaging technology measures the various tissue types in your body: bone, muscle, and fat. It reveals where these tissues are located and their precise quantities. From established research, we understand your body contains normal, healthy fat. Of that total fat, only about 10% should be visceral fat, which is essential for basic biological functions. When you begin to exceed that proportion, your abdominal area will begin to protrude. When you observe someone with a beer gut, it's because the visceral fat within the abdominal cavity has been accumulating, growing steadily, and pushing the abdomen outward from the inside. It resembles a pregnancy, but with a mass of fat. If you cannot access a DEXA scan, a simple method to evaluate visceral fat gain is to monitor your belt size or waist measurement. When visceral fat expands, it directly increases your waist circumference. That is the measurement around your midsection. You will likely need larger trousers, bigger clothing, and will have to loosen your belt. So, if you find yourself needing to expand your belt or buy larger sizes, you are probably accumulating visceral fat. You don't even need to step on a scale to see this. Thus, step number one, if you want to lose visceral fat, is to avoid overconsumption. How can you achieve this? How do you prevent overeating? I will offer 3 practical suggestions. Tip 1, serve yourself smaller portions when plating your food. The control is in your hands as you use a spoon or fork to transfer food to your dish. Aim to keep about 2/3 of the plate visually empty. Leave plenty of blank space. Tip 2, never feel compelled to clean your plate entirely. Recall the old adage about the Clean Plate Club and references to global hunger. Abandon that club. That mentality originated during World War I and II to conserve food for military personnel. Today, in many places, food is overly abundant. When food is on your plate, especially if you didn't serve yourself, do not feel obligated to finish it all. Likely, forcing yourself will lead to overeating, hindering visceral fat loss. The third tip to prevent overeating is to adopt the ancient Confucian principle known as hara-hachi-bu. This Japanese concept, rooted in Confucian teaching, advises ceasing to eat when you feel 80% full. How do you practice this? You might wonder how to gauge 80%. By eating slowly and tuning into your body's signals, your stomach will fill gradually. As it approaches that 80% mark, it releases a hormone called leptin, which travels to your brain, signaling to slow down because fullness is approaching. Eating slowly and mindfully allows you to recognize when your hunger is satisfied, but not when you are completely full. Often we are conditioned to eat until we feel very full, then continue a few bites beyond, reaching a point of discomfort and being stuffed. Avoid that. Simply eat slowly until your brain communicates that you are effectively done, which aligns with that 80% fullness point. Consuming ultra-processed foods. This may appear obvious because ultra-processed items contain added sugars, unhealthy fats, artificial preservatives, colorings, and flavorings, all components that disrupt a healthy metabolism. A healthy metabolism is essential for burning visceral fat. When you eat ultra-processed foods, you damage your gut microbiome, which is necessary for metabolic health. That same microbiome also helps reduce inflammation. Damaging it can lead to increased systemic inflammation. Another key point is that ultra-processed foods are exceptionally easy to overconsume. Remember, the first rule is to avoid overeating. Many ultra-processed foods are scientifically engineered to trigger cravings and overconsumption. They are designed for your brain to respond intensely to their taste and flavor, compelling you to eat more. If you overindulge, you not only load up on excess calories, but also ingest harmful additives that impair your body's capacity to burn visceral fat. A considerable amount of clinical research highlights the benefits of coffee in reducing excess visceral fat. A study from the Harvard School of Public Health, for example, observed men and women aged 35 to 69. These individuals were overweight and exhibited insulin resistance. The researchers divided them, providing half the group with 4 cups of coffee daily, brewed from Robusta beans, for 6 months. The other half received a placebo. After 6 months of 4 daily cups of coffee versus placebo, body composition was measured. The coffee drinkers, consuming 4 cups daily, reduced their body weight by an average of 4.6 pounds, just under 5 pounds. They also specifically reduced their visceral fat simply by drinking coffee. Interestingly, the placebo group, who continued their normal diets, actually gained 4.4 pounds on average. So the coffee group lost 4.6 pounds. The placebo group gained 4.4 pounds, creating a significant divergence. This effect is attributed to compounds in coffee like chlorogenic acid, caffeine, and caffeic acid. Therefore, drinking coffee represents one actionable strategy to lose harmful visceral fat. A study performed by the Isfahan University of Medical Sciences in Iran, an institution known for food as medicine research, involved 70 women from a diabetes clinic with metabolic syndrome. These women had some excess weight, hypertension, high cholesterol, elevated blood sugar, and a large waist circumference, indicative of substantial visceral fat. These are the classic signs of metabolic syndrome, often a precursor to type 2 diabetes. The researchers aimed to study the effect of green tea. One group was given 1 cup of green tea to drink 3 times daily, 3 cups total per day, for 8 weeks. The other half received only warm water as a placebo. Upon measuring body weight and waist circumference at the study's end, consider the body as a tube. Excess visceral fat stretches it out, creating that beer belly. When you reduce visceral fat, the circumference shrinks and the tube is less distended. After 8 weeks of drinking tea 3 times daily, the tea drinkers lost about 2 pounds and reduced their waist size by nearly an inch, about 3/4 of an inch, equivalent to roughly 1 belt notch. Measurements confirmed the loss was specifically from visceral fat. The green tea drinkers also exhibited lower blood pressure, specifically a reduction in systolic pressure, the top number. This is protective against stroke, as high blood pressure dramatically increases stroke risk, so lowering systolic pressure is highly beneficial. Weight loss tends to attract significant attention, often spawning popular ideas that people wish to believe, even if unsupported. I was initially skeptical about apple cider vinegar and weight loss. However, as research emerged, I, as a scientist, must adhere to the data. New evidence, when critically evaluated, must guide conclusions. Regarding apple cider vinegar, I was astonished by Japanese research showing a dose-dependent effect on metabolism, specifically weight loss, reduction in body fat, including visceral fat, and lowering of inflammatory markers. This is genuine food as medicine science. The findings were remarkable. In one study, participants received either a low dose, 1 tablespoon, or a high dose, 3 tablespoons, of apple cider vinegar daily for a month. Imagine pouring 3 tablespoons from a bottle into a small cup. It's a quick shot. Compared to a placebo group drinking water, any intake of apple cider vinegar led to a reduction in waist circumference, which mirrors the amount of fat inside the abdominal cavity, the visceral fat. Over the month, vinegar consumers saw their waist size decrease, had less body fat, lowered inflammatory markers, and lost weight on the scale. This is impressive evidence. Notably, the higher dose group lost more weight and body fat than the lower dose group, demonstrating a dose-response effect, a strong indicator of a genuine biological mechanism. The type of fat lost was specifically visceral fat, the harmful inflammatory fat we aim to eliminate, often seen in an apple body shape common with aging, where waist size expands due to visceral fat accumulation around the organs. Apple cider vinegar effectively helps reverse this. A few additional insights. When analyzing the mechanism, because I always probe how something works in humans, we find it's not the apple origin in apple cider vinegar, but the vinegar itself, the acetic acid. All vinegar is defined by its acetic acid content. Chemists term it acetic acid, while chefs call it vinegar. Acetic acid functions by inhibiting the expansion of existing fat cells, called adipocytes, and also impedes the body's ability to generate new fat cells from stem cells. We are born with a set number of fat cells that can enlarge, and under certain conditions, new ones can form, increasing fat mass. Acetic acid helps prevent both the enlargement of existing cells and the creation of new ones, which appears to be a primary mechanism. This implies that while apple cider vinegar is clinically validated, other vinegars like white vinegar, red wine vinegar, and various fermented vinegars from fruits and vegetables may also be beneficial. In Asian countries, black vinegar and other fermented types are common. Exploring a well-stocked store reveals immense diversity in vinegar production. My health advice for anyone interested is, whatever vinegar you choose, examine the ingredient label carefully. Ensure it is pure vinegar, be it apple cider, red wine, etc., without added ingredients. Well-intentioned manufacturers sometimes add substances to enhance appeal, such as in salad dressings. While dressings contain vinegar and oil, they often include additives that can undermine metabolic health. For optimal benefit, choose pure, unadulterated vinegar. If you found this information valuable, you will undoubtedly appreciate our next video. Please take a moment to view it.